Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you very much for making the time to come for this maiden panel discussion of Unite and Transform Ghana. My name is Wisdom Akbalu. I am a professor of economics, but I am here as the chair of Unite and Transform Ghana group or initiative. Today we are having our first panel discussion, and I will, without taking any time, I will just give the floor to the moderator of this event so he can make the introductions and then start the event. So I'll hand you over to our one and only Ben Akapo. So Ben, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for the brief introduction. I just felt that I should also, since we're going to be joined by people from different parts of the world, just let them know what we stand for at Unite and Transform Ghana. So our vision is simple: to transform Ghana into a modern country. Our mission: provide ethical leadership and good governance for economic and social development, which is why we're talking about ethical leadership tonight. And our values: ethical leadership, excellence, respect, merit, fairness, and common sense. I believe as we continue with this endeavor, some of what we have wanted to throw the spotlight on will come to bear. My name is Benjamin Akapo, and it's good to have all of you join the conversation with us this evening. And from wherever you are, thank you for connecting with us, joining us in Accra, Ghana. Without further ado, this is the first in our ethical leadership series, and the topic we've selected for the discussion: the importance of ethical leadership in national development. The importance of ethical leadership in national development. I'll give a brief scope on this matter, but that'll be after I introduce the guests for tonight and check in with everyone to ensure that we can have an interaction. So first on the bill, Mr. Daniel Yao Domelevo. He is former Auditor General of Ghana. I don't think he needs any introduction. He's a man of principle, he's a man of steel, and he is with us this evening. He is a former policy advisor with CARI. He's an MP, former MP and Deputy Minister, Health, Local Government and Rural Development and Environment of Ghana. Then finally, we have Nana Derby, Professor of Sociology, Virginia State University in the United States of America. Lady, gentlemen, thank you for joining the conversation. I would like to hear from you, so I know that all of you are on board.
Yes, Benjamin, if you can hear me.
Did you see me?
On board.
Okay, yes, I can see you and your colorful kente. I'm trying to rock the Ghanaian fabric as well, so good to see you in your kente fabric. So,
yes,
Nana,
we can
thank
hear
you for joining. Mr. Domelevo, thank you for joining. Do we have Honorable Odoom with us?
I think he's in a car. He's driving.
Okay. We'll try to sort that out then. So let me kick off the conversation. Like I said, the parameters for the conversation. I'll take initial thoughts from our guests, all three of them, in about 2.5 to 3 minutes. So that will be about 9 minutes. We have 1.5 hours for this conversation. So in about 9 minutes, I'll pick the initial brief thoughts of our guests. I know some of them have some things they want to expand on. And from there, we'll get into ethical leadership, what it is all about, and how we can get a grip on developments in our country, in Ghana. So I'll just plead with you to stick to time. So after those initial thoughts, then I would want to expand on the questions I'm going to be throwing to my three guests, or our three guests, and hopefully we can have a number of rounds within the space of about 50 minutes, okay? So that by the time 1 hour is exhausted, then we'll have about some 20 minutes for Q&A, which will bring further insight into what our guests will be sharing. Is everyone okay with that before we move forward?
Fine with me.
Great. So let's get down to it. In simple terms, some of what you could find on Wikipedia and some from some of the greatest scholars or academicians when it comes to leadership, governance, and all of that. Ethical leadership is leadership that is directed by respect for ethical beliefs and values and for the dignity and rights of others. Bottom line, simple terms. Now, I'll just read this little bit for you, for all of you, before I proceed. And it is this. It comes to us from the book written by Professor Chinua Achebe all the way back in the year 1983. The title of the book is The Trouble with Nigeria. The Trouble with Nigeria. And we could easily insert Ghana in there. And this is what the good old professor writes. The trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. There is nothing basically wrong with the Nigerian character. There is nothing wrong with the Nigerian land or climate or water or air or anything else. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of personal example, which are the hallmarks of true leadership. I am saying that Nigeria can change today if she discovers leaders who have the will, the ability, and the vision. Such people are rare in any time or place. But it is the duty of enlightened citizens to lead the way in their discovery and to create an atmosphere conducive to their emergence. If this conscious effort is not made, good leaders, like good money, will be driven out by bad. The countless billions that a generous providence poured into our national coffers in the last 10 years, and I'm talking as far back as 1983, would have been enough to launch this nation into the rank of developed nations and transformed the lives of our poor and needy. But what have we done with it? Stolen and salted away by people in power and their accomplices, squandered in uncontrollable importation of all kinds of useless consumer merchandise from every corner of the globe, embezzled through inflated contracts to an increasing army of party loyalists who have neither desire nor the competence to execute their contracts, consumed in the escalating salaries of a grossly overstaffed and unproductive public service, and so on ad infinitum. The final paragraph I'll share with you. Whenever two Nigerians meet, and you can insert there again, Ghanaians, whenever two Nigerians meet, their conversation will sooner or later slide into a litany of our national deficiencies. The trouble with Nigeria has become the subject of our small talk in much the same as the weather is for the English. But there is a great danger in consigning a life and death issue to the daily routine of small talk. No one can do much about the weather. We must accept it and live with or under it. But national bad habits are a different matter. We resign ourselves to them at our peril. And that is how I want to kickstart this conversation. National bad habits and ethical habits. If we resign ourselves to them, we do so at our own peril. I'll start with you, Mr. Domelevo. For you, in simple terms, what is ethical leadership? And I know you have something to share with us about FATHER, an acronym. Please go ahead, sir. Your turn.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me say that I identify very much with the professor because to me, the best resources that any nation or organization has is human resources. So if we are able to harness these human resources well, the sky may not even be our limit. But coming back to ethical leadership, the concept has been summarized into what we call FATHER. It's an acronym. And this FATHER stands first for fairness. F stands for fairness, which means that the organization or the country is run on meritocracy. It is not an issue of favoritism. You deserve it. That is why we give it to you. The A stands for accountability. That is where the leader takes responsibility for failures and bad decisions, not to give the excuses that have become paramount.
Hello, Mr. Domelevo. Can you hear me? So while we try to get Mr. Domelevo back on the connection, I'll come to you, Prof, to find out from you. I believe Mr. Domelevo is no longer with us. So I'll come to you, Prof. For you, ethical leadership. What is the bottom line, and what do you see in Ghana?
Ethical leadership, I believe that Mr. Domelevo started off very well, and the excerpt from Chinua Achebe's book that you provided sort of summarized it all for us. Ethical leadership is about service to the people. It's about integrity. It's about honesty, sincerity. It's also about making sure that you are able to adopt moral standards that facilitate judicious use of resources to ensure that at the end of 2 years, at the end of 3 years of service, at the end of 4, 5, 10, 8 years of being in power, you can say that posterity is coming to judge you positively. I would like to ask our leaders, 10, 15, 20, 100 years from now, what will posterity remember you for? What have you done for our country? You see, nobody chose where they should be born. Nature dropped us in Ghana. So nature accorded or provided us all those resources that should not belong to one person. But we must also understand that while we expect our leaders to engage in ethical leadership to ensure that there is integrity, transparency, accountability, judicious use of resources, we at the grassroots are also responsible. It is sort of reciprocal, and that we are able to rid ourselves of that culture of sycophancy that prevents us from, criticizing our leaders the right way. And by criticizing, I am not saying that people should come on television, should be shouting at the top of their lungs, no, that's not what we really want. We want useful conversation about how to utilize our resources, including time, the youth. And the youth have got to be very angry. The youth have got to be angered by this. And when I get a chance to talk again, I will explain why I believe that the youth should be angry. Thank you.
Great, succinct, straight to the point. Let me find out whether we have Mr. Domelevo back. Mr. Domelevo, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. While I'm not responsible for that interruption earlier, my apologies. Anyway, I'm sure I threw you off a bit, but you started with the acronym FATHER, and you started speaking about fairness in the sense of meritocracy. Can we move on to the next letter?
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for the interruption. I don't know what happened, and technology is like that. So I talked about FATHER. The first one is fairness, where meritocracy should be the order. The second is accountability, where leaders must take responsibility for failures of their decisions or policies instead of giving excuses, running away from their own decisions. The next one is trust. Trust is the cornerstone of leadership. And to be honest with you, if people cannot trust you, it's difficult for you to lead them. That is the only time that people can follow you, when they trust you. So trust is very important. The next acronym, which is H, stands for honesty. A leader, ethical leader, must be honest so that people can believe in what he or she is saying. If you are not honest, usually, even when you are speaking the truth, it is doubted. So you must be seen as someone who is honest. Then equality or equity. An ethical leader must try and establish a fair playing ground. or a level playing ground for all the people. Even though equality cannot be said that we will all be equal, there must be equity in ensuring that nobody is maltreated or left outside the team. The last one, which stands for R, is respect. An ethical leader must respect the members of the team. Not only the members, but must respect contrary opinion and tolerate it. And most of the times, to be very honest with you, as a leader myself, the views that people expunge on issues at times become superior to your own initial position. So if you listen and give them this respect, they can help you or assist you with such rich ideas. And I think these are the things which are missing, and we need to bring them back into leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those initial thoughts that you have shared with us, Mr. Domelevo. Do we have Honorable Odoom? Do we have Mr. Odoom, Honorable Odoom yet?
Hi, Ben. He left a message just recently, just a few seconds ago, that he's actually in Liberia, Monrovia, and he's having a slight connection problem. He's there to pick up an award for President Kufuor.
Right.
So he's in Monrovia. The network is a bit unstable. That's why he's having some challenges.
Right. I get it. It can be patchy there. And I just saw the message. I didn't even realize he was the one sending it. So let's move on with the conversation. As and when we can have Honorable Odoom join the conversation, we shall rope him in and take it from there. So coming back to you, Prof. You're far away in the United States, but in terms of ethics, mores, the standards that we adhere to in Ghana, what you know, and whether it's on a political level, religious level, or socioeconomic level, what is it that you see from all the time that you've spent in Ghana compared to other jurisdictions you've been in, for example, the United States?
Thank you so much. That's a very beautiful question. I can say that I probably wouldn't want to dwell on the Ghanaian scenario yet, apart from maybe mentioning a few encounters with Ghana police, but we will talk about that shortly. With the American system, I would say that the system works. If we are able in Ghana to get to where I hear myself, if we're able to get to a standard where people would be scared that if we were to have punitive system or a measure where people are so afraid of losing their jobs for violating policies, for non-compliance of policies, we will be able to get somewhere. In the United States, every time I hear about ethical violence, it's all about, no, I'm not going to do this and lose my job. Everybody is conscious about the implications or the consequences, because if you are an ethical leader, if you engage in ethical behaviors, you're always concerned about the consequences of your actions. What effects, what impact is that going to leave you? Now, when it comes to Ghana, I can talk about our parliamentarians, for instance. We have a system where if we were to have a very objective majority in parliament, a lot of things would go the right way for us. We have never had instances where parliamentarians have ever stood against their own party. But what happens here in the United States? We may recall Joe Manchin and how he stalled the progress in the Senate, and people may not have understood why he was doing that. He had his constituents in mind. He comes from a very red state, and he belongs to a blue party, the Democrats. Now, whenever he has to vote, whenever he or other party members have to vote, they need to remember what their constituents expect them to, because they send them there. Do we have that in Ghana? If we were to have about 10 members of the majority who would always vote with the opposition, because the minority in Ghana is always more effective, people in parliament become more critical and more rational when they are in the minority. It is when they are able to understand, or when they become transparent to let us know that this is what we understand to be wrong with this system. So if we were to have a few majority parliamentarians voting with the opposition, the minority, I am sure the right things will get done. I have been in parliament maybe a long time ago where an MP, a female MP comes, she misses some kind of voting. She arrives in the parliament and says, where were you when we were having those votes? She said, oh, one of my constituents came, she's getting married. She doesn't have, the husband doesn't have money. So I went with her to Makola to go and buy her some stuff. You know, imagine. And I didn't hear any of the MPs standing and saying that, no, that is not a sensible use of your time. If the general population, the constituents, understand the fact that when they send members of parliament to represent them, their responsibilities are not to go to churches, their responsibilities are not to go to funerals, and that they are supposed to help project and move the country forward, maybe things might change. So that's a little bit of comparison I have right there for you.
Okay, interesting one. Same to you, Daniel, Mr. Domelevo. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think I'm with my sister on the positions. In fact, what disturbs me about the public service in Ghana in particular, and almost all the African countries, is that people do not aspire to be in public office because they have something or some value to add. People look for public office as an opportunity to make their personal gains, what I call the personal economic recovery program. So people go to office because it is a channel of becoming rich. And the society is losing confidence in leadership in Ghana, just as in any other African country. Because everyone knows Daniel. We know how challenging the economic situation was for Daniel. Daniel becomes a minister, auditor general, or holds any public office. Within 2 or 3 years, Daniel is filthy rich. And what disturbs me about Ghana and Africa is that the youth have started copying my generation and the generation before me, that is the older ones. And people are starting to think that those shortcuts, those abuses of office, corruption are necessary. And once you go through them and you make the money, the end justifies the means. In fact, what disturbs me most is when I hear people talk about the old good days, and always tell the aged or those who are about my age and more that bow your head in shame. With the level of technology and knowledge we have today, we should be talking about a better today, not a better yesterday. So it means we are destroying the future of our children. We are destroying the future of generations yet unborn. But what accounts for this? From my point of view, what is happening in Ghana, which is in several other African countries, is that there are no consequences for abuse of public office. When people get into public office, and we all know them, and we can call them by the name, they are thieves, nothing happens to them. We actually even celebrate them. We invite them to chair important functions. We invite them to lead committees and etc. So I think these are some of the things which is happening in our society, as a result of which nobody is trusting leadership anymore. Finally, what has happened from my point of view in the past is that we have mistaken eloquence and good English speaking to mean a good leader. In fact, some of the leaders we have in Ghana and Africa even understand the English better than the King of England. They can even teach the King of England English. So they speak so eloquently that people think that this is the leader. And when they come to office, you can see the abysmal performance, and they have the infantry of just saying that, well, my predecessor or others are misbehaving the same. Negative benchmarking. The leadership we have today does not take responsibility, like I talked about, accountability, being responsible for your failures and say, I'm going to address it. Instead of that, they compare themselves to other failures. Have you looked at Cote d'Ivoire? Have you looked at Burkina Faso? Have you looked at Zimbabwe? What is happening in maybe Gambia? Instead of saying that, no, this is wrong, I am going to correct it. So this is the challenge that I think we may all have to address today. Thank you.
Great. And I'm hoping that at some point, apart from your example, your shining example that we have, we can get Honorable Odoom on board, because he also has some stellar examples to share on the positives of ethical leadership. In case you just joined the conversation, we're talking about ethical leadership. It is the first in a series that we're having at Unite and Transform Ghana. And we want all of you from wherever you're joining. I'm seeing a lot of you joining from different parts of the world. Some are leaving bit by bit, but a number of you keep joining. So let's keep joining. Let's spread the word. We're live on YouTube and Instagram as well. So let's take note of that. We're live on Facebook and Instagram. I beg your pardon. Facebook and Instagram. There's also YouTube as well. So you can connect with us. Just look for Unite and Transform Ghana. You'll get the feed, and then we can proceed from there. So, Prof, you heard what Mr. Domelevo just made mention of. He's talking about this chronic problem where people go into public office not to serve, but to be served, not to offer anything, but for self-aggrandizement. He calls it a personal economic recovery program, because we know with all kinds of political leadership, members of parliament, ministers, some of them invest so much into campaigning, and then when they come into power, they want to recoup what they have got. He also talks about eloquence not being tantamount to excellent leadership. But from where you sit, this whole bit about ethical leadership, should it just be restricted to the political class, the leadership when it comes to the religious class, or maybe even those who are doyens of business? What do we make of it? Is this something that should transform the entire fabric of society? And how do we achieve that?
It has to permeate through the whole of the system, through the whole of society. But let me make a few comments about, Mr. Domelevo's comment on the English, as well as, the eloquence and what the youth expect. I have always said that our leaders seem to know exactly what they can do and they should do when they come in office. They are able to put those on paper, and they are able to campaign on those platforms. But the moment they come in, we don't see anything. Now, if we look at the current administration,
and why do you think that is? Even as you go on, why do you think that is? We have Ivy League trained leaders. We have Oxbridge leaders from Oxford, from Cambridge, from all the elite institutions. They do know, and they are well traveled. So why can't they translate that into our leadership when it comes to ethics and development?
As I said, it's partly because of that culture of sycophancy where the youth have not successfully held them accountable. And then we don't have systematic campaign policies or campaign financing policies where we must make sure that individuals do not use politics as their investment. Because when they come in, if you come into office, if you gain political position, that should not be a personal recovery program or a personal investment for you. You are coming in to serve. You are coming in to make an impact. You are coming in with a vision that we want you to implement. But unfortunately, we have a system where the youth look up to, and we honor and praise those who come and loot our system. Recently, when we have the Asin North by-election, I was a bit disappointed when I saw the youth in the street, singing and dancing about having squandered, what's his name? I don't remember the name. I remember only the person one.
The other candidate.
The other candidate. No,
Yeah.
that's not his money. Yeah. That's your money. Yeah. It's the money that should have been used for your education. It's the money that have been used for water projects, for electricity projects, for healthcare systems. If the youth is educated to understand this, then they are going to feel angry. That's why I said I will talk about the youth, the need for the youth to be angry. The youth have to be angered by what is going on, because as I said, we didn't choose to be born in Ghana. God gave us the resources in Ghana. And so one person, we cannot sit down and let a few people, steal all this and then come around to give us $10, 10 cedis, 5 cedis, 100 cedis during election for us to jubilate over. If we are able to look them in the face and tell them, you are coming back for us to vote for you, tell us, what did we get from you when you were in office a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago? If they are able to list, enumerate for us what they did in the past, then they qualify, all right? If you did so much for your constituents, you don't have to give them 10 cedis for them to vote for you. And if anybody comes to you with 10 cedis to get your vote, you should feel insulted because the person thinks you are very stupid. Beyond stupidity is what they are telling you, all right? Maybe other person, because I have something else I need to think about that, but maybe.
Okay. So interesting thoughts we're putting together. In case you just joined us, this is our first in a series of talks we're having on ethical leadership, and we have our 3 guests joining the conversation. Honorable Odoom, who finds himself in Liberia. He has served as a deputy minister, as an ambassador, and he'll be joining us hopefully shortly. We also have Professor Nana Derby, who is in the United States, and we have our former Auditor General, Daniel Yao Domelevo. I'm also looking, Mr. Domelevo and Professor Derby, I'm looking at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime latest report. I do not know how many of you have seen it, on corruption in Ghana and people's experiences and views. You know, we usually have the Corruption Perception Index, the CPI. Then last year, sometime, we had the Ghana Statistical Service collaborating with one of the organizations of the United Nations, and they came out with a concrete report, not perception, reality of what had happened. It painted Ghana in a very bad light. But this recent report as well, just take a look at this. I'm sure some of you may have seen it. More than a quarter of people who have contact with public officials pay them bribes. That is the verdict in Ghana. More than a quarter of people, more than 1/4, who have contact with public officials pay them bribes. 26.7% of the adult population paid a bribe to a public official in 2021. And in urban areas, the prevalence was 26.7%. In rural areas, 26.8%. Now, who takes these bribes? There is a bit of a chart, and I just want to walk you through them briefly. Prof, you started talking about the Ghana Police Service, and guess what? They are atop the list, 53.2%. Then the Ghana Immigration Service officers, 37.4%. GRA Customs officers, 33.6%. Lands Commission, 32.4%. Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, 29.5%. Passport Agency officials, 29%. Prosecutors, judges, magistrates, 22.3%. NIB, what used to be the BNI, 21.2%. Even they are on the tape per the report. National Road Safety Authority, 17.8%. Prison officials, 17%. It goes all the way down. I mean, there are GRA officials in there, welfare officials, embassy or consulate officers, public utility officers, teachers, lecturers, professors. This is where, Prof, you might also be concerned, because they are also there with 9.5%. Doctors, nurses, midwives, everybody. The executive branch of government, elected government representatives, everybody is in there. So then it brings me to the point. Is it a lack of realization of what the problem is? Or is it that we know what the problem is, but because the problem feeds us, and us being those who want to be unethical, we choose to maintain the status quo? I'll start with Mr. Domelevo before I come back to you, Prof.
Thank you, Ben. You have answered yourself. The truth of the matter is that because there has been no consequences for this misbehavior, it has gradually eaten the social fiber in our country. What even disturbs me is information that go to our schools and you even see corruption there. I'm told when they are looking for even a class prefect or a school prefect, even there is corruption. And I'm like, my goodness, at that level.
Can I share a story with you?
Please go ahead, share with me.
With all of you very briefly. So this is a bit dicey because the child involved has parents who are supposedly in government. Okay. Now, this child is in a certain school and was competing for the position of school prefect. And guess what happened? And this is just a recent story. On the day of voting, the child went with many boxes of chocolate and distributed them to the classmates. Now, everyone had thought the other person would win. But after the distribution of chocolate, guess who won? This child. And you ask yourself, what are we preparing our future generations for? If they are starting at that level, only God knows what they'll be doing when they get into higher office. Anyway, just the story I wanted to share. And this is true, by the way. Of course, I cannot mention names. Dan, please go ahead.
So thank you for giving me an example, which is true. And I also want to say that I was invited to the University of Cape Coast when I was in office as Auditor General to talk about corruption. And when I reached there, in fact, the topic was supposed to be looking at corruption in the public sector, especially the politicians. And I crave their indulgence to say that, look, gentlemen and ladies, the politicians are not here. So why don't we talk about ourselves, we who are here? Because I have come to the university, I'm so impressed about the number of vehicles that I can see parked over here. In fact, I know your salaries. If your salaries can actually produce these vehicles for you, then you are magicians. But I don't think you are. The truth of the matter is that people are corrupt. How many how many students got their first class because they genuinely studied and deserve it? How many of them got second class upper because they genuinely deserve it? So you see, we are even teaching corruption in our institutions of learning. And I remember passing a comment that I'm surprised that you guys are surprised the politicians are corrupt, because you teach them corruption when they come to you. And when they are practicing it, you are surprised that they are practicing what you have taught them. So I think as a society, we have to go back to basics and ensure that we rewrite the wrongs, especially from the top. The top must give us that good example. It bleeds my heart that before coming to office as Auditor General, there was Code of Conduct, which was drafted a bill to regulate the behavior of public office holders. And up to today, that bill has not seen the light of day. Why is it so? Because they are corrupt. All the, what do you call it, cabinet ministers and the members of, they're all corrupt. So they don't want to push this bill. Why would you not come out with a code which we can use to judge you? Instead of being individual, Daniel thinks you are right, Ben thinks you are not right. We need rather a code which can be a better yardstick for judging office holders, and they are not ready for it. Because of what? Guess what? There are issues in it, such as assets and liabilities declaration, which must be published, and people are not interested in it. There are issues like lifestyle audit. People are not interested in it. So if we don't go back to basics and say public service is just what it is, you just serve. You don't come there to make money. If you want to make money, go to the private sector, as said by our president. He must ensure that those who want to make money go to the private sector. But people are making money in his government, and he's looking at something else. So we don't want snollygosters. We need people who will promise and deliver what they promise. Thank you.
Interesting thoughts. And you took the wind out of my sail, because up next, that's one of the areas I'm going to be looking at. You started by talking about campaign financing policies. You spoke about that. And I was going to ask maybe further on in the conversation about the Public Office Holders Bill and why it has not seen the light of day up to this point. For those of you who have joined the conversation, many more of you are adding on. We have almost 70 now. We're grateful for your time. But let me just seize this moment to look at a few of your reactions. Some are responding, well spoken, Daniel. That is Rosa Dube. And I have this one from Dr. H. Kwame. You say, probably we Ghanaians have not been able to A, distribute our national resources equitably, B, insecurity in finances after serving the public, and C, we as leaders are not assertive enough. Hence, unethical or corrupt leadership is becoming a social security, I think you mean problem in itself. You can keep your messages coming as well. Bond.
Ben, you're muted.
Ben, we cannot hear you anymore.
I'll see you.
He probably got a call on his phone that muted him. If he's
Let me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I think I may have unwittingly pressed something that has got my video to go off. I'll try to get it back. But anyway, if you can hear, that is fine. On the back of what you said, Mr. Domelevo, and the Public Office Holders Bill, Prof, coming back to you, what then do you think should be done from the grassroots level? Because it appears, like Prof has elucidated on, that those in leadership, because they benefit, they are beneficiaries of the system, will not want to do anything about it. How do we, the ordinary people, push for the right thing to be done? Because it appears the system is in the grips of, for lack of a better word, a cabal, a political cabal, since 1992, and they are firmly in place, and it appears we, the ordinary people, can do nothing about it. What then do you feel we can do?
I do have to repeat myself a little bit. We will have to be very angry. The youth have to be angry. They have to be angered by what is going on. And then we also need the punitive
Are you saying
measure.
we're not angry enough?
No. I don't see any anger. If you were to be angry, we wouldn't have the same people being recycled for the presidential positions and all that. We wouldn't, because the very people who are saying they would do better, even some of them are in government. The system has gotten so bad that we are competing over who is the lesser of two evil, instead of competing over excellence. We're not even looking at the excellence. We are looking at the one who chose only a little bit of stealing instead of, magnitude of, put it that way.
And you're so right, Prof, because here in Ghana, you hear people say, oh, let's boot this one out because this one cried they stole, but they didn't steal as much. Or this
That's
one.
the point. That's my
and
argument.
that is so disappointing.
Right. And then the system must also work. As in my introductory message, I said in my introductory remarks, I said that here, people are even afraid to lose their jobs. And just that, I don't want to lose my job. Ensure that they engage in ethical behaviors through and through. I remember when I was a student, I was teaching a class. I had over 175 students in the class, so I couldn't use essays. I preferred multiple choice exam. And they had a centralized center for us to grade the scantrons. Now, I went there to pick up my exam. I was rushing to class. First of all, I was late. I got there. I told a young man, hey, I need to pick up my class. I was able to give the course code, the number of students in the class, the number of questions, even told him some of the questions. But just because I had left my ID in the card, this man said, no, I don't want to lose my job. I will not give you the questions. So I had to go back, explain it to the students, for me to bring it back the next day of class and not when I was supposed to bring it to class. Now, a few years ago, I was doing a project. I was working on a project in Ghana. That was when you could cash checks, American checks in Ghana. So they mailed a check to my project manager to pay staff and all that. They mailed it, they didn't give it to me. But when I arrived, I was told in Ghana, I was told that they couldn't cash the check, and so I should return it with me to the United States. Now we weren't sure how we would pay them because they didn't have an electronic transfer system already established for the project. So I went to the accounts, the finance department. I said, okay, is it okay? I tell you, you give me the cash for me to take to them? They said, no, Dr. Debbie, you cannot carry cash. I have worked on so many projects, not a dime from them finances or from the grants come to me directly unless I am qualified to receive it. Everything will have to be paid digitally. The Ghana folks will send their request, and that is how all the sectors work. You don't hold money unless it is yours. So if we have the system to be working, if we have the youth to be able to hold the leaders accountable, if we do not honor the looting, if we do not praise them when they come in the SUVs and the vehicles that they used our money to acquire, if anybody is campaigning right now saying that I am the one who would come and create jobs for you, please ask them. You are a part of the government. How many jobs have you created for us? And when you come in, are you going to create jobs through the government system or the private sector using other people's skills and resources? Or are you going to use your resources so that the profits from such businesses are still going to be yours? So we need to be rational. We need to be calculative. We need to assess them very, very well. We shouldn't be recycling them. We should let them know that we understand. And unfortunately, democracies work effectively when the majority of the population understand what democracy is and they understand what to expect from their leaders. That is the disconnection right there. We haven't been able to educate the general public enough to understand that when you are voting people into office, you are not begging them to come and lord it over you. You are asking, they are actually begging you to bring them into office so they can serve you. If we can eradicate this disconnection, if we can fill it up and the population would understand this, I am sure that when people come to them to campaign and they say they are going to buy them a bicycle, they will be sure that they have the finance for the bicycle, and the bicycle is not going to be stolen bicycle, but from their own money. It's all about accountability, transparency, and respect for posterity.
And it's interesting the point you make about that consciousness, that realization, that epiphany, if you like, that, hey, we're ceding our power to these people, but at the same time, we are the ones with the power and they are meant to serve us. And if they fail, we should hold them accountable. We should hold their feet to the fire of accountability. But you see, you make mention of the fact, for example, that you've been through all these organizations and done all this work, and unless some specific sum of money is supposed to come to you, not a dime comes to you. In our system, it's the reverse. I've heard ministers of state called to parliament to account for how money has been spent, and sometimes it is laughable. Not just ministers of state, other people who work in, government, the administrative arm of government. Sometimes we focus only on the politicians, but the technocrats are also, that's where the devil is. The technocrats, the government officials, and all of that. But coming back to you, Mr. Domelevo, it makes for interesting reading then, because if you look at the latest Auditor General's report, the year prior to this one, Ghana lost over 17 billion Ghana cedis, to waste, to all manner of things. And if you consider that we're going to the IMF for $3 billion, then you get the picture of what this means. The last Auditor General's report, over 15 billion. The good part, over 99%, I believe, about 99.6% is recoverable. The question is, will we be able to recover such money? How can we feed ethics, Mr. Domelevo, into our general governance system? Maybe starting with where you've been, the Auditor General's Department, to ensure that that ethical leadership can give birth to the development we all seek. And even as I pose this question, let me remind you, we have 3 minutes to the top of the hour. In 3 minutes, it will be 8 o'clock, and we can do maybe an extra 5 or 7 minutes before we start taking questions. Over to you, Mr. Domelevo.
Thank you very much, Ben, for that. Let me say that when it comes to the Office of the Auditor General, remember, I didn't say audit service. Many people mistakenly think audit is the function of audit service. No. Under Article 187, Clause 2, it is the Auditor General's mandate, not audit service, and not the board. It's only one person mandated in the country to audit the public sector of the country. So the Office of the Auditor General, as stated in Article 187, Clause 1, has a very important role when it comes to ethical behaviors, when it comes to the fight against corruption in our country, just as it is in any other country. You talked about amounts that are recoverable. It is sad that maybe these monies have not yet been recovered, but my expectation is that the Office of the Auditor General will respect the constitutional imperative. According to Article 187, Clause 7, anytime the Auditor General in the performance of his functions under the Constitution or any law of Ghana comes across any item of expenditure which is contrary to law, he is duty bound. Thanks to Occupy Ghana versus Attorney General, he is duty bound to recover those monies. That is, disallow the expenditure and charge the officials involved. So if that has not yet been done, then it's unfortunate, but I'm sure something must be in process. But when it comes to fight against corruption, it must be hot, 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 hot. We don't delay. If you delay, it becomes a problem for you because the evidence normally get obliterated and lost in the process. And I always say that when people get corrupt or get corrupted, they are enriched, boldened, and they can even influence the justice system and everything. If you saw some of the cases during my time that went to the judiciary, I can't help than to say that the judiciary are equally corrupt, because you see a clear-cut case and you see the type of judgment which comes in. Even the case referred to the Supreme Court is not what they brought in. They say, tell us whether this is a security issue, national security issue, and then they come out with a different decision. It's like you ask question A, the judiciary decides to answer question B or C. So I hope and pray that if those monies are actually recoverable, as you are saying, and they have not yet been recovered, I expect the Auditor General to exercise the mandate of his office and recover them. The problem is, once you stop recovering them, once you stop holding people accountable, other people start thinking it's a field day. We can also do likewise, and it becomes a bigger problem for the country. Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts, penetrating thoughts you have shared with us. Let me just take a few more of your messages. I'm trying to get them on my other device, so pardon me if you see me turn around my gadget. So this one says, Paulina Akbalu says, can we have an organization that scrutinizes those who serve in public offices before they are appointed? I know our 1992 Constitution gives some stipulation about, you know, age and the person being of sound mind and all of that. But maybe we need more. Maybe we need more. So Paulina is asking, can we have an organization that scrutinizes those who serve in public offices before they are appointed? And maybe I'll add to that question for both of you, Prof. and Mr. Domelevo. Can we also have organizations that select, for example, the IGP, among others? Look, we have an overbearing executive. The president is appointing the IGP. He is appointing people to boards. He is appointing the chief of defense staff and all of that. That is a recipe for corruption or unethical disaster. And we see some of that. Jacob Yabua also says, most people don't understand. Please let me just take these quickly and then we can respond. So you can note them down if need be. Most people don't understand democracy and our corrupt nature elect leaders of our own kind. Multi-party democracy is the root cause of corruption. Multi-party democracy is an oxymoron. Greatest deception and the expression of the axiom divide and rule majority for the benefit of a few political elite who see themselves as the... Hello? Hello? Who is
Yes,
speaking?
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Did you get the first bit from Paulina Akpalu? Because I'm now on Jacob's comments.
Yes, you were loud and clear. Please proceed.
Okay, so he goes on to say, and the expression of the axiom divide and rule majority for the benefit of a few political elite who see themselves as the new colonial masters of their own people, neo-colonialism. Always the chief corrupt persons are the presidents themselves. Once the head is rotten, the entire body is gone. I'll try to truncate the messages so I can take a look at all of them. Dr. Lawrence says, in Ghana, we elect a dictator who fires, okay, but that is his thinking. Who fires the Auditor General, Mr. Domelevo, for auditing a scandal in his administration? It's so sad. The courts ruled on this matter and said that the manner in which this was handled was not the right way. But unfortunately, there's no remedying that. Dr. H. Kwame says, every system of governance is dependent on how resources are distributed. And any time a system acknowledges and gives everyone his or her share of the national wealth, there is harmony, peace, and attendant progress. So say real salaries and real salaries and not pretending to pay some salaries, and it's pretending to work. Unemployment benefits, child benefits, aged benefits, and so on. When all these are instituted, it would reduce the excess fat for our leaders to steal big time, as that which is left is small to steal. In my view, this is how mixed economies like the UK, Norway, and other Scandinavian countries work out. Wow, quite a number. I'll take the last three, and then since we're also giving opportunities, since we're in that portion of the conversation, for people to share their thoughts. Nase says, 1, the lack of strong institutions equipped with state power to freely and independently implement their mandate in the Ghanaian society without any form of interference. 2, our very culture as a society encourages unethical behavior in leadership. For example, if the entire constituents expect school fees, funeral expenses, jobs, and other special favors from their MP, as if it is his or her duty, we can't demand ethical leadership from our leaders. This is a crucial point. And then number 3, divided in purpose as a country. In other words, he's saying we're always divided. And I think this is also a crucial point, because it's always viewing matters through MPP tinted lenses or NDC tinted lenses. In the end, we all suffer. Kwame says, can the panelists comment on ethics and the lack of enforcement of policies in our part of the world? And maybe this final one I'll do for now. There are more comments, but I'll end here so we can reflect on them. Ernest says, I think most of our so-called public servants are public abusers, and our legislators and politicians have been caught into as a money-making venture with poor controls. I don't think they will come out with any laws which will invariably place some independence. I think it's impediments on them, unless the populace, unless the youth mount pressure on them to pass those bills into law, as Mr. Domelevo hinted. Okay, so those are some of the comments that have come through so far. I'll take the rest after. Let me just note, I ended at Ernest. Any quick reflections, Prof and Dan, on this? I'll start with you, Prof. Any quick reactions? Where do you agree? Where don't you agree? What do you think should be the way forward? Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof.
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was muted. So you rightly spoke about the committee. I'm coming on the committee from Mrs. Akpalu, I believe. Who is going to select the members of that committee to vet our public offices? Ghana is one of the few or many countries that have so many redundant committees and commissions and investigative units that don't do much. If we were to count the number, let's count them together. We have YOCO, we have STRAJ, we have BNI, we have CID. What else do we have? All these agencies are there to ensure that laws are enforced, policies are not violated, that there is compliance through and through. But do we have that? Do we want to add more? Do we want to create more opportunities for people to come and get certain allowances that they may not deserve? It is up to us to hold people accountable, to hold officers accountable, like making sure that when they are coming back to us, they're not coming to tell us how many funerals they attended. They're not coming back to tell us how many church services they attended with us, but then to clearly show us that they constructed so many miles of roads that are easily maintained, and not the kind of roads that they only put gravels and they put some coal tar on there and the people will be jubilating. What else? So I've talked about the committee. What else did they comment on?
So some were talking about the fact that we ourselves too, by the things we impose on members of parliament, for example. Members of parliament technically are not agents of development, but people are reaching out to them for funeral, and sawa, like we put it here, donations, among others, that we ourselves reflect the leadership we get. What is your take on that?
That's the point. That's the point. So we will need to educate the general public to understand the role of the parliamentarians, the expectations of all public office holders. And then we also must understand that it's not just the leaders, as you said, it's also about, even the private sector. We have people who have come from overseas to create jobs. They've come to start businesses and all that. At the end of the day, they have to fold up because their employees would steal everything, including pens and erasers, so that they will have nothing to build on. All right. So we need to hold ourselves accountable and hold them accountable also, and educate the general public to let them know that when we have elected officers, when we have public offices, their responsibilities should not be our direct problems, and that they have to think of the common good. Whatever they do must benefit everybody, the generations of today. Our children and our children's children must benefit from the actions of our leaders of today.
For you, Dan, any responses to some of the questions that were raised?
Yes,
or some of the
let me
comments?
let me say first and foremost, I agree with Debbie on her position. But when it comes to the issue of all the constituents coming to the MP for their school fees, for money to do funeral, the question I ask is, now who caused them? These are the promises that they do, or the things they do when they want to hold public office. So they will attend all funerals and donating monies and paying people's school fees, etc. So when even you are not in office, you do these things. Then when you come to office, they will expect you to do more. I was in public office for 4.5 years. Nobody came to me for his or her school fees or something of that nature. So they promise all these things. And clearly you made it very clear, and I'm happy to hear that the legislature, for instance, are not responsible for the economic development of their constituencies. Construction of roads, schools, etc., is the responsibility of the executive. That's why the Minister of Finance presents a budget to Parliament to get approval. And they pass a law, which you call Appropriation Act, mandating the minister and the government, the executive, to use money to develop the country. But then when the executive now are not doing their work, and the legislature takes advantage of that, instead of holding them accountable, they go and promise the people that if you vote me into office, I'm going to do this, and the people are demanding it from you, then who caused them? That's the question I would like to ask. So we may need civil education, because we are confused about the role of individual public office holders. When it comes to the point made about setting up an independent institution which will vet the appointment, I agree with Prof. that currently there is almost no position that you can hold without anybody being involved. Even when the president is supposed to appoint, it's in consultation with the Council of State or Public Service Commission or something. So the Constitution provides for a vehicle of vetting or checking to be sure that the person is of good standard and capable of doing his or her work. But when people assume office and there are no consequences for misbehavior, no consequences for underperformance, then what we'll get is what is happening today, where we have people who seem to know nothing about their job. They are not delivering on their job, but they are filthy rich at the expense of you and I. Thank you.
Square pegs and round holes. And boy, haven't we seen a number of those? But the question is, what is the way forward? Let me take a few comments, because now it is mostly for those who have been observing in silence. Where did we knock off, Ernest? Okay, so that's where we ended. Nanasafo Kantanka says, where are we on demonstrations? The use of brute force on demonstrating citizens seems to have created this numbness for the very idea of demonstration. So he is saying as well, it is guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution to hit the streets and demonstrate and all of that. And sometimes the police also gets it wrong, because they think you must seek their permission. You don't seek permission, but you must inform them, because you may block certain places so they can give you guidance. And of course, they can also help with fixing dates. He's asking about it from that angle. Dr. John Pipi says, the ethical life has much deeper roots. It is rooted in the beliefs and values of a person. When it comes to the ethical life, what really counts is what we are and do when no one is looking. I love this. He says, so our standards for right or wrong should be internalized and lodged deeply in our souls. That's when a person's belief actually comes in. Incidentally, this is a very important part of the message of Jesus Christ, to not only give us the truth, but he helps us to live the truth. So although we do not have a close congruence between faith and the ethical life in Ghana at the moment, faith properly delivered and taught can be a great source of the formation of ethical beings. So he's taking it from the religious standpoint. If we imbibe the right values, whether it is Christianity, Islam, or even African traditional religion, then maybe we shouldn't be seeing some of what we are seeing. And interestingly, the churches are full on Sundays in Ghana, but the very people who are in the churches, who end up in government offices, who end up as technocrats, what are they doing? Nana says, the presidential meter is an independent monitoring tool that enables Liberians and civil society actors to evaluate the performance of President George Manewia and the Coalition for Democratic Change against promises made during and after the 2017 elections. We need something similar in Ghana to track and measure promises made and performances on the job. And Nana, it's good to see that you joined the conversation from that angle. And you remind me of the Obameter. Obama, there was that meter for him. I think he got just below 50%. But if we really had that, look at our country right now, one village, one dam, one district, one factory, jobs and all of that, maybe we would be able to get a clearer picture. Nana again says, we need a national purpose to drive our national development plan. A lack of a national purpose results in a lack of ethics. But what I would say, even before you come in, Prof. and Mr. Domelevo, is that even the NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission, the planning has become political. It is an NDC plan versus an NPP plan, an NPP plan versus an NDC plan. Same thing like we are seeing with affordable housing. This one comes to do this, the other one comes to say this is that, and does something. Let me pause here. Any quick, any reactions before I look at Dr. Lawrence, Kwame? Yeah, reactions. So, Prof.
All right. Okay, so the issue is that we have some level of entrenched divisions within our system, so that we are no longer concerned about the common good for one Ghana, but it's about this person coming from the north, that person coming from the south, from the Volta region, so that there was a time that I think one campaigner or one commentator said, even if you put a goat as the leader of this party, their followers will still vote for them, because we are so divided on ethnic grounds that we don't think about the common Ghana that we all hold dearly together. We have divided ourselves. We are bent on bringing our ethnic members into office, not just the political leaders, but other public officers, that we do not care so much about how we're going to succeed. Let us also educate. As I said, it's about education. Education. And then we should stop recycling the two parties. It's going to be difficult not to bring the two parties back, because again, it's about the tribal thing at this moment, but I believe we are somehow close. If we can have almost 50% in parliament, then that is something that can work in the near future. But I would say that platforms of this nature will be very, very important. Maybe we need to look for some grants to help people go to the rural areas and help educate them, because it's about time that, you know, we considered Ghana as a nation, the growth of Ghana, because this is a country that has almost all the resources one can think of. We have the sun, we have gold, we have do we have diamond? We have
we do.
Yes, we have almost every resource in the country. We shouldn't be poor. Ghana should not be poor at all. Even if we are, there is poverty in every culture. There is poverty in every country, but the rich-poor gap shouldn't be as wide as we have right now. We should educate, and we should stop the sycophancy, being able to tell them when they are wrong, being able to face them, being able to make them aware and hold them accountable is all we need at this point. All right. I hope I answered your question.
Mr. Domelevo. Right.
Yeah, thank you. I will agree more with Debbie, except that she forgot that the most precious resource that we have as a country is the human resources. We have 31 million people or more, and we can do a lot with these people. In fact, what beats my mind is that when you go international, you go to the World Banks, the IMFs, all those international organizations, you meet Ghanaians who are on top of issues. And then back at home, nobody seems to care about them or is interested in them. Like Prof. said, I agree, education, education, education. We must let the Ghanaian understand that the money is not for the president, the money is not for the minister, the money is not for any public office holder. It is our money that they are using, and therefore they must account for this money. When they are constructing our roads, they are not doing us any favor. Therefore, we must go back to the drawing board and ensure that the National Development Planning Commission does its work. The Constitution actually enjoins, I think under Article 38, Clause 8, I don't remember exactly, but it is under the directive principles of state policy that successive governments must, as much as possible, continue the development plans of their predecessors. But what do we see? A school is completed, yet it is abandoned and a new one starts. We have the Saglame project. You see Saglame and your heart should bleed as a Ghanaian. It doesn't make any sense at all that we can have those buildings standing there. And today we are being told that some feasibility studies have been done and we have to start another one. So if they start a new one and it's not completed and there is a change in government in 2025, exactly, that means we are going to do something else. This is nonsense and it must stop somewhere. Nobody runs an organization, a family or institution like this. Why are we running a nation as if we are idiots? We can't continue tolerating this. So we need more education. If we have to go to the grassroots level, the districts and the regions, and sensitize the people that it is time we start holding these people accountable. I think the time is now. There is the need for civil disobedience. We don't have to allow our servants who are supposed to serve us become dictators to us, abusing their office anyhow. So this is my reaction to that. Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, let me make a quick comment.
Interesting point, Prof. I'll let you come in shortly. By the way, we have just about 8 minutes left on the conversation. Okay. So more concise, very concise responses, because I see a number of people dropping their responses. What I take from here, there is the need for civil disobedience. Is that the solution? Quick thoughts, Prof, as we move on.
I am a very calm person who believes in dialogue over civil disobedience. I have been talking about the youth being angry. I don't expect them to really get violent when they get angry. They just need to sit the leaders down and reject them when they come. They need to use their intellectual capabilities rather than taking to the street and causing harm and destroying the little that they have. Because if you've observed, whoever is in power controls the police. There have been instances where they have unleashed so many tear gas and stuff on the youth peacefully protesting against the rot that is going on. We don't want that, but they can have peaceful conversation about that. And then I also wanted to talk about the leadership that,
Well,
like,
I'm not calling for mob action. I'm not calling for mob action. If you call us, you treat us anyhow, we can decide to ignore you. Disobedience does not necessarily mean a mob action. So that's not what I'm calling for, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. But I also wasn't even directly responding to you. I was just giving advice to the youth that, this is what they need to also do.
Right.
I was also going to talk about the discontinuity of projects. That is the pain and the core of the dishonesty and selfishness, because if they have the nation at heart, when they come in and they know that President so-and-so and his government started a project that they could not finish and we booted them out, they need to continue. But because it's all about me, it's all about me and my household, it's all about me and those who campaigned for me, who would sacrifice to go to the villages. They don't care so much about the resources that would go waste if they don't continue.
Okay.
And these are the areas we need to hold on. Thank you.
All right. Let me quickly take some more comments and messages that are coming through, just so we can exhaust most of them. Where did I even end? So this one says the public sector is now seen as a money-making venture, an entrepreneurial adventure using taxpayers' money and exploiting our national assets. Dr. Lawrence says the Council of State is to help the president appoint qualified candidates. Recently, they told one political party that they only look at qualifications of candidates. Is that good enough? So anyone can be the electoral commissioner ahead of the civil service, I think you mean. Then would the panelists recommend, this is Kwame, would the panelists recommend the teaching of ethics in our basic curriculum? I think that's a brilliant idea, the teaching of ethics.
That's what I've been talking about. Mm-hmm.
I think I've had the chairperson of the Commission on National Commission on Civic Education on one of my programs in the past talk about this before. Emmanuel Oseofusu says, sycophancy, greed, and self-seeking glorification by our leaders is what is dragging this nation back. Ghana deserves better. Nana says, execution is the problem. Plans are there. Parties that come into power sidestep the plans and execute their own plan to make money. We have lost our national purpose. Nana, again, youth are not. We need to educate them to organize in the selection of. I'm hearing some. Mute, please. Lawrence says the current administration has made. Oh, did I just lose? Okay, the current administration has made demonstrations useless. They have seen more demonstrations than anyone else, but nothing has changed. Althea Gordon Davidson and Faye Gordon says, I know that the acquisition of our various indigenous languages, indigenous knowledge, and the effective application of our various indigenous knowledge will surely move us in the right direction. Well, hopefully. But you see, all talk without any action, I don't know. This one, Paulina Akpalu says, if you look at Rwanda, they have modified the Western form of democracy. These Western world brought to them. Can we also do something like that? Okay, so those are, I think, all the messages we can take because we are winding down on the conversation at this point. So as we wrap, I want to put the question to both of you. How then can we bring about the change? I was hoping Honorable Odoom would join us because he had some positive examples. We've spoken about the negative ones. Maybe in the next session we may have ample opportunity. But are there any positives at all, Mr. Domelevo, Prof, that you can share in our system? It cannot be all bad, can it? And then again, in terms of the examples of Kenya, recently I heard some officials were being, they had been arrested, they were going to be jailed. Last year, another person, similar situation in Rwanda. Unfortunately, we are not seeing that in Ghana. We have a plethora of cases. I don't want to mention names. Recently, money found in this person's bedroom and all of that, items stolen. We don't have the facts. The matter has not been concluded. But what can we learn from these countries? Are there any positives we can share to encourage the youth and those who want to do the right thing? And what is the way forward? I'll start with you, Mr. Domelevo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben, for that. Let me say that if you want to be an ethical leader in an environment which is so toxic as we have in Ghana, it's very difficult. But it's also heartwarming when you see how people react to you, acknowledge you, when you are able to withstand the storm. Many times I get surprised when I go to faraway countries like Switzerland and recently Vietnam, and people acknowledge you. Oh, yes, this is the Auditor General. This is the man who was trying to protect our public purse. It's quite good, and it is helpful, and it opens a lot of doors for you. So let me say that I believe and I know that there are several Ghanaians who mean well and who, if they get the opportunity, they would like to serve, but some of them fear going into public office by the very fact that if they want to stand by their principles and do what is right or ethical, they may be crucified and they may not have the opportunity of carrying out what is required of them. I would like to say to them that fear not, it is good you go in there, because if all of us take off our hands from the plug, then it means the evil ones are going to have their field day. So I encourage everyone to go in there. In the mid of the storm, there is hope. My personal belief is that the day we get an ethical leader, you will see Ghana transform like nobody has seen it before. Ghana is not different from Rwanda. Ghana is not different from Malaysia, the Singapores, and etc. We're in the same group. In fact, Ghana was even ahead of Malaysia at independence. So what happened said that they are ahead of us. It's one thing, leadership. So the day we get that leadership, we can transform and also move. So those who lose hope in the country, I tell them, no, there's a lot of hope for us. There's a lot of hope for us, because all that we need is to get the right leadership, and things will start changing as expected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Domelevo. Let me hear from you now, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for the opportunity. And then I would also reiterate the comment on leadership. It's all about leadership, leadership, leadership. And then the next one is education, being able to create the awareness and to sensitize the general public to the role that they must play in ensuring that we have the kind of leader that would think about the common good and not themselves, their friends, and their families. Talking about, you say you probably didn't want comments on that, but I still feel I need to comment on that the money is found in people's homes. Here in America, if you're traveling, and those of you who travel a lot, if you're traveling to, even within your home, if you are caught with $10,000 or more on you, you have to provide a bank statement confirming how you came about that 10,000. And let's put things into perspective. $1 million is a lot of money. Make six figures in the United States. You cannot save 1 million even in 5 years or in 10 years. You'll have to invest, reinvest, and sacrifice, and don't buy good food for yourself and live in good areas and all that. So we need to understand the implications of gaining access to so much money, millions of dollars. All right, when people's incomes will just be around 7,000 cedis a month. We need to think about that. There is a way forward. We have some positives. The positives is that one of them is we are here. We've started this conversation. How far is this going to go? Are we going to let the conversation stay only here with us, or are we going to pass it on? Are we going to re-educate the general public about this? Are we going to further this some more? Look at other related topics, bring it to the doorsteps of those who need to hear this, and let them understand that when we talk about these things, they shouldn't take it personally, because I have been penalized on a few occasions. I won't pay bribe, but I'll ask for favors. If anybody approaches me to say, hey, can you talk to such and such a person to see if they can help me get a job? If the person qualifies, why not? But, you know, because I have this loud mouth, whatever, whenever I send a name forward, this person qualifies, I will never get that opportunity. All right. So we need to let them know the fact it shouldn't even come to that we have to send names. Please, this person is a graduate with this, but that qualified, you know, must it come to that? No, on merit. Yeah, we need to do that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Before I conclude, more comments coming in. So let me just acknowledge, I want to ensure that everybody is fairly represented. Kwame says, Ben, thanks for asking the question on the positives as well. Jacob Yabua says, for solutions and the way forward, we need a CSO as a credible, so civil society organization, as a credible alternative to political parties. The CSO will support to push independent MPs to parliament and wrest the presidential seat from the duopoly of the MPP and the NDC. There's also Nana Safo Kantanka who says, what are the qualities of this right leadership? And how do we even tell until we've tried them? That's the bigger test we face. Who would have thought some of these charismatic leaders would fail? Then Dr. Lawrence again says, Mr. Domelevo has encouraged me. I am flying to Ghana next month. I see hope coming in 2025. There's also join, unite, and transform Ghana. Let's transform Ghana. And that's something we're throwing to all of you out there. Unite and transform Ghana on social media. Catch us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, among others. Just connect with us and let's share ideas. And together, we are going to be able to do this, to transform Ghana bit by bit. Indeed, that's why we have Unite and Transform Ghana. Our time is up, but just to acknowledge all of you and maybe take your final comments in some 15 seconds each. This has been our first in our series. And by the way, this is in collaboration with the School of Research and Graduate Studies at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. It's a Unite and Transform Ghana project. And this has been our first in a series of ethical leadership. Today, we've spoken on the importance of ethical leadership in national development. Before I just wrap the conversation by acknowledging both of you, any final words? 15 seconds, if you can. Prof, I'll start with you again. Any final words?
Final words is that there is still hope. There is hope we can get to where we want to. We've started on a good note. There are so many positives I can't even think of. We have the social media. Several years ago, we didn't have this kind of platform. And so these are tools that we can utilize. And some of you in the media, you can also help push this forward and to identify.
Frozen, unfortunately. Okay, so we got you there. But thank you for sending that in. Mr. Domelevo, you have the final word.
Thank you very much. I want to associate myself with Prof. Debbie. There is hope for Ghana. To be honest with you, there are so many competent and professional people within the country and also in the diaspora. We just need a leadership which will bring all these resources together. And I think Ghana's problem is a very small one. We can easily overcome it. The next thing we must also do is to take this conversation across the country to our people and let them understand that it is time we unite and transform the country. Because let's not make a mistake. No benevolent
up to the point of no benevolent individual. I think what you were saying was no one will come and transform the country for us. We must do it for ourselves. Final comments. I don't want to leave anyone behind. Ali Nachia says, congratulations for this insightful discussion. I don't know whether that is my big boss himself, but if that is you, Doc, thank you so much for following. And Nana says, let's keep promoting Unite and Transform Ghana. There is hope. Rosa Dube says, great discussion. Althea also says, great discussion. And Dr. Lawrence, final one. Is Mr. Domelevo taking the vice presidential position? I don't know for which party, though. Mr. Domelevo, would you like to put us out of our misery and answer that question? And then finally, I'll have Professor Wisdom, the chairman of Unite and Transform Ghana, close the event for us. A question has been asked, Mr. Domelevo. Will you give an answer?
I didn't know that there is a vice president position awaiting me. So I cannot answer that because nobody has approached me or offered me such a position. So thank you very much. But on a more serious,
I see Sensei saying you should contest for the presidency, though. A message that came through. But if we continue like this, we'll never end. So Philip Nani Thomas also says, prefer for a 2024. All right, that's where we'll have to end the conversation. Prof, you have the final word to cap off the entire conversation. Professor Wisdom, chairman of Unite and Transform Ghana.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, the panelists, Professor Debbie and Mr. Domelevo, for such an exciting delivery. I really enjoyed it, especially the last bit of it, asking Mr. Domelevo to become our next president. We will all pray for that. Well, as you have all heard, this is a very exciting conversation. I think we have to keep this conversation going. This is the first in the line of several series that we are going to have. Yes, we need ethical leaders. And as I mentioned I think yesterday, when I had a TV show,
we've lost you. Okay, you just got back.
Okay, we have to build our institutions. Our country is not working because our institutions are weak. And we cannot have good institutions without ethical leaders. So we have a role to play. We have to get together and make sure that we educate people. We encourage people to have ethical principles, to have moral values. And that is the only way by which we can even think of building our institutions, which are prerequisite for our social economic development. So thank you all very much for coming. I think we will expect all of you when we have another series that will be coming up very soon. And we also invite all of you who share this passion. I like the fact that somebody is even coming to Ghana because of what he has heard today. There is hope, but we can only realize the fruits of all this if we all work together as a team, regardless of where you come from. So please, let's get together, let's unite and transform this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Akpalu. Professor Wisdom Akpalu is chairman of Unite and Transform Ghana. For all of you who watched, just connect with us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find us, connect with us. Special thanks to Mr. Daniel Yao Domelevo, former Auditor General of Ghana. Honorable Abraham Dwuma Odoom couldn't join us. He was in Liberia, had some internet connectivity challenges, but he is a former policy advisor of CARI, MP, and Deputy Local Government and Rural Development and Environment of Ghana. We also had Professor Nana on Joy News. On that note, we salute you. Thank you for joining the conversation. On to the next one.
Thank you very much and good night.
Good night.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Good night.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Fantastic. Thank you.